Hey there! Today we are cooking with Italian sausage, bell peppers, aromatic vegetables, and tomatoes. On this episode of What Do You Make of This? We're making Italian sausage and peppers. Sausage and peppers is such a great trick to have up your sleeve. It's a really quick fix on a busy night. It's a very hearty meal, but despite how filling it is, it's actually really full of vegetables. Speaking of vegetables, we've got a little bit of prep work to do before we can start cooking. I'm going to start with this bell pepper. So a great way to get a bell pepper seeded without wasting a lot of the pepper is actually to just find right where the stem is and give it a push. And as you press down on it, it'll actually pop inside the cavity of the pepper. That's a good thing. Turn it on its side and just follow any one of the lines that's in the pepper. You're not going to slice through all the way, but just enough that you can basically crack it open. And that way, if you're lucky, most of the seeds will all be off to one side. You can just get those off into a garbage bowl. I like to give it a little extra tap because there's always a few loose seeds in there and they're kind of bitter as they cook, so you want to try to get those out. Same thing with this white part that's inside of a pepper. Peel off any excess that's just really loose because that too can get kind of bitter as it's cooking. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Just get out the white part, get out any extra seeds. So for this meal, you don't have to, but I like to try to use as many colors of peppers as possible. They pretty much all taste the same. They have a few subtle differences, so if you're really attracted to one color over another, definitely feel free to just use what you like. I just like the idea of having 3 different colors because it makes for a really bright meal. So now that these guys are seeded, lay it skin side down because this is actually really slippery, and to try to go through it with a knife is a good way to have it slip. So flip it the other way. You get a little more grip that way. And we're just going to slice these into about pinky's width strips, thereabout. And you may have noticed I already did a little bit of prep work ahead of time. It's pretty easy to do. This is really the most labor-intensive part of the entire meal, is just getting everything chopped, and it's really not that difficult. Peppers slice up so quickly and easily, and that's one of those things that makes this a really great speedy meal when you're in a hurry. We'll just do the same thing on this guy. Get him chopped up too. And with a good sharp knife, you can just zip right through these. If you find that you get one that's got, let me show you here, get this out of the way. If you find you get one that has kind of a flat bottom, what you can do is just save that part off to the side until you're done chopping. And then the same way you did with the rest of the bell pepper, just run your knife through one more time until you get those nice finger width strips. We'll give these a nice mix to make sure once we dump them into a pan, they get really evenly distributed. There we go. And then the next thing we're going to do is some garlic. I'm just using 2 cloves of garlic for this, but as always, if you love garlic, use extra. If you're not a fan of garlic, use less, use none at all. It's kind of it's a very personal thing, garlic, I find. People either totally love it or not like it so much, so you do what works for you. I'm just going to snip off the woody ends and get those into my garbage bowl. Always try to find the flattest edge of the garlic as you're working because the rest can be kind of wobbly, and that's just a good way to nick yourself with your knife. The more safety you have before you start slicing, the less chances you're actually going to cut yourself. It does happen from time to time though, so just be extra careful as you're cutting. Okay, and then to get the skins off, just lay the flat part of your knife right on top of the garlic. Give it a crush, you'll hear it pop, you'll feel it pop too. And then that usually loosens the skin, yes, from the garlic. We'll do the same thing with this guy. Get those skins off. And the other nice thing about doing that kind of popping method is that it actually makes your garlic a lot flatter, which again, the flat surfaces are a lot easier to slice. So I'm just going to run my knife through along the length of the garlic clove. And we'll do the same thing with the other one. Less work in the long run because we're doing it kind of in an assembly line stage. And then rotate it 90 degrees so that you've got all of your sticks in a nice little row, and slice the other way. And now your sticks become cubes. And that's a good quick way to just dice up your garlic. And we do want this to really melt into basically what's going to be the sauce at the end. So once you've got these into a nice little pile of cubes, just bring them together again and run your knife through it one more time. In no particular order, but this will just help to break up any of the bigger pieces so that it's really nice and small. Clean off that knife. always like to use the back of my knife to clean my hands, by the way. If you ever do that in the kitchen, don't use the sharp end. That's just an accident waiting to happen. And I will just get that right back into the bowl it came from. There we go. Ooh, they're so sticky. Gotta watch out for that. I don't want any leftovers. Okay, there we go. All that garlic is going in the pan, nothing is staying behind. Last thing is going to be an onion. So we're going to start by slicing off, that's a thick-skinned onion, slicing off just that fluffy top. Put the flat end that you just sliced down on your cutting board, and then go right down the middle of the root. Like that. That will make it much easier to peel your onion. And it's always nice to just kind of check both sides of it, and if you find a side of the onion, I'll try to do it down low so you can see what I'm doing here. Sometimes one side will be a lot thinner than the other. Make sure you peel off everything that's thin, because any of those really thin parts of the onion are going to taste really papery. It's not a very good mouthfeel. There we go. Same thing on this side, so just pull both sides. Often I like to just peel an extra piece or an extra layer of the onion just to make sure that there's no peel. There we go. Get that into the garbage bowl. All right, and then similar to what we did with the bell peppers, we're going to be cutting them about fingers width, like that, and you just go right down along the width of the onion. The root part is just facing away from you. And any part that's attached to the root, just throw it out. That's the part that usually makes you cry. It's not worth holding on to. There we go, and we'll get this knife through the last little bit, throw out that root. So now what we have here are some pretty nice wedges of wedges of onion. And what I like to do now for this recipe is just kind of break them up into your vegetable bowl. These are all going to cook at the same time, but the garlic's actually going to go in later, and that's why I'm setting it off to the side. But if you get these into nice little onion ribbons, it really helps them to cook more softly, and then everything's just going to really fall apart and melt into the sauce that we're going to make to go with these sausages. You don't have to completely break up each individual layer, but just take it so that it goes from a perfect rainbow into a few smaller rainbows. There we go. You can even just kind of scrunch them in handfuls, and that breaks them up a little bit faster, especially if you're in a hurry. That's the whole point of this meal. It is a speedy dinner. Okay. And then just like we did with the bell peppers, I'm just going to give everything kind of a toss just to make sure as it hits the pan, everything's already mixed really well. It'll help it to combine a little bit easier and cook a little bit faster that way. There we go. So just like that, not a whole lot of prep work involved. We've got all of our vegetables chopped up. We've got all of the big stuff all in a bowl together, and then it's time to get cooking. Okay, so it is time to get cooking. I've got my pan preheating on about medium-high here. I just want to make sure it's really nice and hot before we go in with the sausage, which is going to be the first thing we cook. So to this warm pan, I'm going to be putting in, try to get my spout adjusted here. I'm putting in a couple teaspoons of olive oil. I don't need a lot. Try to use olive oil if you can. It just kind of helps those Mediterranean flavors to all come together, but if you don't have it, by all means, vegetable oil, canola oil, anything like that will work fine. You just want a little bit of oil in the pan to make sure the meat doesn't stick while it's cooking. We will go in with a little extra though in just a few minutes once it's time for the vegetables. I'm just going to move it around a little bit and check to make sure. Once you see it kind of starting to ripple and move, that's how you know that the pan is hot enough and the oil is hot enough that we can get the meat in. So I'm just gonna get this oil out of the way too. I tend to flail when I talk. Okay, so sausages, yes, there's that nice good sizzle. I'm gonna put them right in the middle of my pan here. Even though some of the oil has kind of moved to the outer edges, it is still coating the bottom of the pan. And that's just going to make sure the sausages don't stick. Now at this point, we're not actually cooking the sausages all the way through. We're just looking to get some browning starting on it so that there's a little bit more flavor in the base of the sauce that we're going to build around these sausages. So if you've got your pan preheated, it's actually going to start to happen pretty quickly. I just gave it a quick check. It's already almost there. Don't move them around too much though, because this is that point where we're really looking to sear and basically caramelize the meat. And if you move it around too much, it's never going to get that level of heat. I am using Italian spicy pork sausages for this, but there are so many different options you can use now. You can use sweet sausages if you don't really like sweet, if you don't really like spicy. And if you're not a pork person, you can use turkey. And if you're not a meat person, they actually make plant-based Italian sausages now, so you can have a totally vegetarian meal, but still have something really nice and hearty for dinner. So many options out there. Explore your grocery store, see what you can get your hands on. And while we talked, yes, we can already give these sausages a turn because they're starting to get a nice golden brown on one side. And we're just going to do the same thing on the other side. If they ever start to try to roll away from you, just hold them in place for a few seconds, and as they sear, it will actually help to create a flat surface, and then, once you let them go, they'll stay put. There we go. You can also just give them a little bit of a press, and that's just going to help to sear the meat into the bottom of the skillet. And I always find, because the pan continues to heat as your meat or your protein is cooking, the second side usually happens a lot faster. Yes. So now that these are all getting some good color on them, I'm gonna leave that one on for just a few seconds longer, but these guys I'm going to take off and just put right back on the same plate. The sausages are still raw, so that you don't really have to worry too much about cross-contamination at this point. Everything is going to finish cooking in one pan. This is also a great one-pot kind of meal. I'm gonna just leave that guy right smack in the middle for another second because it's just not as brown as I'd like it to be, and I want to make sure every one of these sausages is really flavorful because it's going to be about one sausage per serving. So, yeah, there we go. That was all it needed, was that little extra time. Usually the center of your pan is the hottest because that's the part that's right over the burner. Okay, so to this pan, I'm going to go in with just a little bit more oil now because we're going to start sauteing our big vegetables. So total, I'm gonna be using probably about a tablespoon of oil altogether, but we split it into 2 teaspoons and 2 teaspoons. And that will get us 1 tablespoon. So I'm just gonna let this heat up again a little bit. And all of those bits of sausage that are in the bottom of the pan right now, leave that. That is flavor. So to this pan, we're now going to put in all of those bell peppers and onions that we chopped up earlier. Again, that nice good sizzle tells you that you're in that right zone for cooking. You don't ever want to go with high heat for something like this because you'll burn instead of searing, and then, you know, you just burnt your dinner. So it takes a little bit longer over a medium-high heat, but I find if I stick to medium-high heat, I almost never burn my dinner. So if you find you tend to be a burner, probably your heat is too high, or else the other thing I do is I walk away and just forget about my food for a few minutes. Another great way to burn. But stay here, medium-high heat, everything happens very quickly. So we're just going to kind of move these around. And really what we're going to do is the water that's in the peppers and the onions is going to start to sweat out a little bit. And as that water comes out, it's actually going to remove any of the bits of sausage that were stuck to the bottom of the pan. This is called deglazing. Usually you directly add some sort of liquid to it, and that's how you deglaze, but because these have so much water in them, you can actually use basically the vegetable juices to deglaze your pan, and that just builds another really nice layer of flavor. So now that these are starting to warm up a little bit, I'm just going to go in with a little bit of salt. Not a lot because we're going to salt the final sauce as well. But I'm gonna do probably about 1/4 teaspoon of salt and just a little bit of pepper too, about 1/4 teaspoon here as well. And that's just going to help ensure that as these vegetables are cooking, they really start to absorb some flavor as they are releasing all of their juices. So now that these have had a bit of a head start, I'm gonna make some room in the middle, and we're going to go in with that garlic that we chopped up. You always want to give your bigger vegetables a bit of a head start because garlic cooks a lot faster, and burnt garlic goes from being like, garlic is delicious on its own, but as soon as you burn it, it gets so bitter that it will ruin an entire dish. So save the garlic cooking for later on in the cooking process. If we had put everything together all at once, there's a chance that garlic would burn. It's also because it's a lot smaller than these bigger pieces are, so it doesn't take as much to overcook them. Once they've had just a little bit over that heat right in the middle, now we can mix them in with everything. So at this point, we're not really looking to completely cook these vegetables through. Just like the sausages, we want to just make sure we're building a little bit of extra flavor and color into everything because the whole sauce is actually going to cook together as a whole, and everything will kind of lend its flavors to the party so that it becomes just one really nice, mellow, collective dish full of all of these different flavors that come together. It's a really cool dish, and oh man, it smells so awesome in here right now. Every time I make this meal, I just cannot wait to dive into it because the smell of the cooking peppers, of the cooking sausages, of onions, I love the smell of cooking onions. It's a good homey smell, you know? Okay, so these are now having a nice opportunity to warm through. So I'm going to, once again, scooch these vegetables out of the way to try to get a little bit of space in the middle to cook. And the next thing that's going in is going to be canned tomatoes. And for this recipe, I'm using whole canned tomatoes. You can definitely use diced as well. Either one works. Just make sure you give them a good drain first because there's a lot of liquid in here. And if you put all of that liquid in the pan, you're basically going to get a soup. And once you put that onto a bun, it's just going to turn into this soggy bun soup thing. You don't want that. You do want this to kind of dry out and be a really chunky sauce. And a good way to do that is to just get as much liquid as possible out. And even after draining, there's actually quite a bit of water in this bowl. So what I'm going to do is just go in and drop my tomatoes in individually so that that liquid stays behind. So we'll just get all of these guys into the pan, and I mean really, look how much liquid that is left over. That would have turned into a very, very soupy sauce. And that is not what we want tonight. So that's gonna just go off to the side. And then I like to take a wooden spoon with these whole tomatoes and just kind of break them up a little bit. So like I said, you can absolutely use diced tomatoes for this. Saves you a step, but what I like about the whole tomatoes is it really gives you control over how chunky you make your sauce. I personally like it to be really nice and chunky, so this gives you the chance to really control the texture of things. You can definitely use fresh tomatoes for this as well. If it is summertime and the tomatoes are just singing to you in the grocery store, definitely bring them home and use them in place of the canned tomatoes. But the nice thing about canned tomatoes is they're pretty much delicious year round. It doesn't matter when you buy them. They're packaged when they're fresh, and so they basically maintain that nice summer fresh tomato flavor year round. So my advice for this sauce is use fresh ones when you can, but when you can't, canned tomatoes is definitely the way to go. And I personally always have at least one can of tomatoes in my pantry. So this is a great little pantry clean out kind of meal. A couple of these guys do not want to break up. I'm basically just kind of breaking them into quarters for this, and they will release some juices as you break them up. So again, that was a reason that we drained them first because there's already plenty of liquid going into here. And this last guy. Come on, you. There we go. Give it a crunchy tomato. Okay, so now that those are all broken up, get that out of the way, and I'm just going to give these another good toss. There we go. And things now have gone from searing to kind of starting to simmer a little bit because we've got that liquid in the pan. And that's a good thing because this is basically going to start turning into a sauce. But again, not a soupy sauce. It's not like a tomato sauce that you would put down over, you know, like a marinara sauce for spaghetti. It's a lot chunkier, it's a lot heartier than that. Almost reminds me more of like a salsa, actually. But it's an Italian salsa because we're going to be using some Italian spices in this. So speaking of those Italian spices, the next thing that's going in is going to be just some mixed Italian seasoning. It's a really nice blend of rosemary, thyme, basil, oregano. I'm going to do pretty generously. It's dried already, so you don't need quite as much as if you were using all of these herbs fresh. I'm gonna do about half a tablespoon. You can always add more if you really, really like the flavor of it. I find sometimes though, because it's so many different herbs, it can almost start to taste a bit floury or soapy. And so I like to do a little bit less. You can always add in more. Also, if you like this spicy, you can absolutely add in some red pepper flakes, but because I'm already using hot Italian sausage, it's gonna be plenty spicy all on its own. And you know I like it spicy. I think I've mentioned that in the past several times now. So I'm just going to give this a good mix, and then once again, adding a little bit more salt and pepper. So my tomatoes were already salted in the can, so I don't need a lot. If you, however, are using unsalted tomatoes, you can give it a little bit of a taste and adjust as needed, but you'll probably find you need to add more salt because your tomatoes don't already have salt in them. For me though, I'm just gonna put maybe about another half a teaspoon of salt, a little bit more pepper. But like I said, if you're ever unsure, just scoop up a little bit of the broth that's in the bottom of your pan and give it a taste. And then to this, we're gonna put the sausages right back in. And what's going to happen is all of this is going to cook together and the sausages are going to kind of stew in this sauce that we're making. and everything's just gonna make a really nice harmonious flavor. So space them out a little bit. I like to try to cover them with some of these vegetables. And then all we're going to do, get that dirty plate out of the way, is take a lid and give it a cover. I don't like to completely cover it though, because then again, it gets too soupy because none of the steam can evaporate. If you just crack the lid just ever so slightly, not too much, not too little, you just want to be able to let a little bit of that steam escape. That will help any excess water to evaporate so that you don't get a really soupy sauce. I'm going to let this cook for about 20 minutes. What we're looking for is the sausage to be cooked all the way through, and when the sausage is done, the rest of it is done. So come back, check on it every once in a while, make sure you don't need to either take the lid off because it's getting really soupy, or if it starts to dry out too much, put just a splash of water and put the lid back on. But really what we're looking to have happen is all of the vegetables to cook, for the sausage to cook through. It'll make kind of a really nice mellow sauce, and that's when it'll be time to put it on a bun and eat it up. Okay, so 20 minutes has gone by. Let's have a look and see how these sausages are doing. Oh, those look awesome. The colors are so beautiful on those. I wish you could smell this because they smell amazing. This is going to be such a good hearty meal. Let me get this lid out of the way. Just give everything a quick little stir. See how it's looking. That's good. So most of this liquid has evaporated, and that was because I left the lid cracked, so that was all it needed. And everything has stewed together so nicely. So one note about the sausages. These were 20 minutes. Use that as your baseline. You may find that you need to adjust that cooking time depending on the kind of protein that you're using, how big your sausages are. So what you're looking for indicators that they're done is, if you were to cut one open, it would be the same color all throughout, right to the very middle. The juices would run clear, but if you're ever in doubt, just give it a poke with a meat thermometer, and depending on the type of meat that you're using, most thermometers will actually tell you at what temperature the meat is done. So use that as your gauge when in doubt. Definitely for sausages, things like pork and stuff like that, you want to make sure that they are cooked thoroughly. So 20 minutes is the baseline. You may need to adjust that slightly based on the protein that you are using. I just want to reinforce that fact. So at this point, dinner is done. You can eat this really in any way that you like. I have been known to eat this as is with just the sausage and peppers, and that is delicious all on its own. You can serve it over pasta. It's a really nice topping for any kind of pasta or noodle under the sun that makes you happy. My personal favorite though is to kind of make like a kicked up hot dog, and I'm gonna use some really nice big fluffy Portuguese rolls. So you can use any sausage or hot dog roll that you like. I do find though that the really traditional smaller hot dog buns don't really stand up to the heartiness of the sauce and the heartiness of the sausage as well. So if you can, I would err on the side of something a little bit bigger and stronger. But again, use what you've got. That's always okay. It just may be a little more difficult to eat, but every bit as delicious. So to do this hot dog style, I'm just going to take some tongs here, and we will put a sausage right in the bun. And the Portuguese rolls are great for this because they're a little bit shorter, so you actually get a bite of sausage in every bite. Sometimes the longer buns, you eat a lot of bread before you actually get to the good stuff. And then on top of that, try to get these tongs out of the way here. I'm just going to take a scoop. I can't multitask. There we go. Get a little scoop of the peppers and onions, tomatoes, garlic. I mean, that is just an amazing, about as fancy as you can get with a hot dog right there, in my opinion. And just stand that up on the plate. And I'm just going to keep going and repeating that. So we'll do another sausage here. Whoop. Oh, that one's definitely going to be more of a sandwich. That bun cracked open on me. Oh well, it'll still be good. Some of these tomatoes, onions, peppers. Oh, it looks so good. And these are hearty. One will definitely feed one person very well. I sometimes like to serve it with maybe a little side salad just to stretch it out, or, you know, always try to get some more vegetables into my meals. That's what I like to do. But on its own, this is definitely going to fill you up. It is such a great meal for that. So we'll do another one here. And I got that pretty well measured perfectly. 3 bell peppers, a can of tomatoes, and a big onion. And that is going to make us 4 very generous sausage rolls here. one more tong. Might even have a little bit of peppers left over, so that'll be a good snack or even just something nice on top of a salad for lunch the next day. One more scoop here. There we go. Look at all those colors. You've got the red, the green, the yellow, orange. That's why it's kind of fun to use different colored bell peppers, just because you get, you know, it's like a party. It's like confetti ribbons. It's beautiful. And I think these guys are so big, I can just fit 4 of them on the plate. Try to get that guy shimmied in a little bit better. Look at that. That is a dinner that I cannot wait to eat. I cannot wait to share with you. I hope you enjoy it. These are the Italian sausage and peppers. And that's all there is to this quick and versatile meal. As always, this recipe can be found in the description below. Please like and subscribe for more videos. I'm Jessica. Thanks for watching.